G'day everyone and welcome back to Lift Talk. This is episode 76. I'm here with Kevin Tran.
Thanks, Axel.
We were just talking about how no one can get Kelvin's name correct, even though it's very different to Kevin.
It is different to Kevin.
Shout out to Kana Chambara, who thinks that Kelvin's name is Kevin.
Yes, thanks, Connor. Thanks, Chana.
This is episode 76, and 75 was deleted because you guys are hooligans.
It's going to get re-uploaded.
Thought that you would put copyrighted music in a podcast episode.
I thought it'd be like 10,
silly
maybe
could
10
you be?
seconds would be legal, you know. Mate, we're giving them free promotion. They should be paying us to put their music in our
podcast. They need our couple hundred viewers to stream their songs more.
They should be paying us to put their music in. Like, it should be sponsored. Should have been a sponsored episode by these artists.
All right, you can reach out to them.
But no, they reach out to me.
What's today's topic, Kelvin? What do we want to talk about?
So today we're going to talk about why your training sucks right now. So this goes out to all the people who think their training sucks and their lifts are in the trash.
In the bin.
In the bin, mate. I know that I made a post about this recently, why your training sucks right now. And you also spoke about speaking to yourself in a way where, you know, you don't want to convince yourself that your lifts are in the trash because they're not, right? Your lifts are never in the bin. But that's just something that you're telling yourself because you just don't have a different perspective. You don't have the right perspective.
Yeah, so the post that I made was mostly centered around positive self-talk, positive affirmations, optimistic, like
Positive
outgoing,
stuff.
positive, like going into a session, thinking about ways where you can improve or things that you need to focus on to do the job well, or things that, you know, parts of your technique that are really important for you to execute well, as opposed to going into the gym because maybe your last month of squats hasn't been good. You go into the gym going, ugh, my squats are in the bin. You know, this session is just going to be another one of those. And I see this a lot where it sort of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy and it snowballs into the point where one bad session goes into two, into a whole block, into a whole whole cycle of training, and then you haven't had a good squat session. Yeah. All because one session led to the next one, led to the next one, led to the next one. When the reality of the situation is you could have nipped that thinking in the bud after one session.
Yep.
And reflected on it and go, okay, it wasn't my best session. What do I need to do to get back on track?
Absolutely.
For the next one. And then you can actually change the trajectory of your training in that moment as opposed to letting it fester and sort of like get worse and worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you really break this down, right? Break it down. You know, break it down. Anyway, if you really break this down, right?
Can you cut that?
No, it's staying in. If you really break this down, yes, you might have one bad bench session where like things didn't feel good. And you keep telling yourself like, oh, fuck, now bench is in the bin, man. Bench is going to be shit. Of course it's going to be shit if you're going to think of your bench in that way. Right, which, it annoys me as well. When you saw this post, I was like, man, I feel you, man.
You get clients like that all the time who do that. But then I think the really important part of analyzing training is trying to understand why.
Yes.
And then sort of like trying to fix that the next time. So if you do have a bad session, look at the previous 48, 72 hours of your life and maybe think, what happened in my life that could have altered this session? Did you have 3 nights in a row where you didn't sleep very well? Did you have 3 days in a row where you didn't eat enough food?
And a lot of those things actually go unnoticed. Like, you don't realize it until you actually think about it.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think that training occurs in a vacuum and that all of these outside factors don't affect training performance. But outside training factors affect training more than training factors. By a wide margin.
As in, you're saying, oh man, the other 20 hours of your life or the other 22 hours of your life impacted 2 hours of your lifting? What?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
How many hours are in a week? What's 24 times 7? I'm not sure. But but you train for maybe 8 to 10 hours a week. Yeah. Max. Like, you can't possibly think that time spent has more of an impact than the rest of the week. So if you do a bad session, reflect on the previous 48, 72 hours, sleep, nutrition, mindset. Maybe you had an argument with your partner 30 minutes before the session and you're in a bit of a negative headspace and you weren't quite focusing and you were distracted. Maybe you had heaps of work to do. Maybe you had uni assignments. Maybe you had all this other shit going on that you didn't factor in because you were solely focused on my training is the only thing that affects my training.
Yeah, I've got two things to mention about that. Number one, obviously you don't want to use that as an excuse for shit training, because the reality is, yes, those things will impact your training, but don't use it as an excuse or a crutch to go like, oh, my training's going to be shit today because I had shit sleep. That's not the reality.
And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is going into the session, as I mentioned before, with a positive mindset, thinking I'm going to do the best that I can today, and here's how I'm going to achieve X, Y, and Z. I'm going to think about these things. I'm going to, do this for my warm up. I'm going to take these jumps and, start to plan ahead, think ahead, all those little things.
I think the other thing
and then after the session is done, then you reflect, okay, how did it go? Did what I was doing actually work? How was my externals leading into the session? Did that have any impact? And then start to piece the whole puzzle together, as opposed to focusing on one thing and focusing on a separate thing. Try to think about how these parts of your life, how the training impacts the social, how the social impacts the psychological, blah, 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 biopsychosocial model stuff. Think about all those things and how they interplay with each other, and then make a decision about what needs to be done. Because a lot of times, nothing needs to be done. And you just have to go through another week of training.
I think the other thing is also when people are in this mindset where their lifts are in the bin, quite often, or what I've experienced is a client would have that experience where their lifts don't feel great. And then they just say to me, send me a video, squats felt shit. Okay, great. But what actually felt shit about
unhelpful.
it? What actually felt shit and why did it feel shit? And of course, I'm not expecting the athlete or the client to have all the answers, but at least put some fucking thought into providing some feedback and reflection on what was actually happening in that session, instead of just saying it felt shit. On video, it may look completely fine to me. So what do you expect me to go? What do you expect me to do? Obviously, what I would do is ask them, why did it feel shit? What were your externals like? Which part of the lift felt shit? Did you feel like you were actually putting in effort coming into that session? But if your lifts are feeling trash, actually give it some thought rather than just going, oh man, feels like shit. And you don't know what to do about it.
And yeah, usually about 20% of your training is going to feel dog shit.
Yep.
About 20% of your training is going to feel amazing. And then the rest of the 60% is going to be just meh, just training. It's just average training. And I think when you can recognize that throughout your training weeks and days and blocks and whatever, you're going to have bad sessions. Sometimes there is no reason why, and sometimes nothing needs to be done about it. But recognizing that it is an off session and not an off lift or an off block or an off cycle or whatever is really, really important, because it allows you to get back into the next session basically with a fresh slate to attack that session the best way that you can. And when it does start to become a trend, if maybe you do have a whole block where your main squat day doesn't feel good, and it is actually a trend, every Monday squats, they haven't felt good for a whole block, now we can start to actually think about what we do to change it.
Yeah.
But before that point, there's just enough ups and downs. There's enough noise in the system with all of the stuff that goes on in the rest of your life that you're not going to be able to pinpoint the exact reason why one session may have been off. So sometimes it's actually a bit of a fool's errand to try to figure it out. Sometimes you just need to go back to training. And most of the time you'll have an off session, you'll get back into training the following week and it'll be fine the following week. And it's usually doesn't turn into a trend unless there's actually something that needs to be fixed underneath it.
Yeah, that links to what I did mention in my post about why your training sucks right now. And what was mentioned in that post is stop sacrificing productivity for optimizing. And I think that sometimes people get stuck in a loop of trying to optimize every single session because this particular session, their legs didn't feel good. That particular session, the unrack didn't feel good. Or that particular session, you misgrooved a rep. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a focus on technique and improving technique over time, but it shouldn't feel like you're changing technique every single session, because at the end of the day, the people who win and the people who get the strongest are the people who are most consistent with the effort doing the same thing over a long period of time. And that's not just applicable in powerlifting, it's applicable across a whole bunch of sports where I'm sure fucking Stephen Curry would have shot threes a million times over and over and over and over again, not changing a thing. But after realizing, okay, I've been doing the same thing for 10,000 shots, I've realized over the past 10,000 shots, I do a particular thing and we can try tweak that a little. You can apply the same thing with squats, bench, or deadlifts, where you do the repetitions of squats 1,000 times. And after that 1,000 times, you recognize a trend, as you were saying, over like a block or 2 blocks that you could potentially change something or adjust something to actually make it more productive or make it more efficient. But changing something every single session, every single week is not going to help you with improving your training.
And the thing with powerlifting is it's not really like other sports because the fatigue cost for each rep that you do is
That's
actually
true.
quite high relative to like shooting a basketball. I could stand at the free throw line and shoot 1,000 free throws and not get tired
Yeah.
and not feel any fatigue and go back the next day and shoot 1,000 free throws. You can't do 1,000 reps of working squats.
You could.
You could at like 60 kilos and then you return the next day. You wouldn't be able to do it again. And that's kind of my point is that the learning curve for a squat is actually going to be a lot
Longer.
slower and longer than a skill that is
You're gonna have to
something
do
that you can practice over and over and over and over again without that fatigue. So in a powerlifting context, when you're trying to develop a skill, it actually does take a really, really long time compared to other sports because you have to do so many reps to get it right. And you can't do that many reps in a given session, in a given week, in a given block because it's actually really tiring and your body needs to recover in order to improve
really
and get
good
better. So like the basketball analogy is really good because, you know, if a basketball player who, you know, they have very similar routines every day. They like get up at the same time. They have their food at the same time. They have their treatment. They go and shoot. They do the same routine on the court. And then it gets to the game and, you know, maybe certain 3-point shooter, he shoots 1 out of 10, which is really bad. And then the next game he shoots 0 for 7, which is really bad. And the next game he shoots 1 for 9, which is really bad. And over that 3 game sample, he hasn't changed anything about his training. He hasn't changed anything about his preparation. And oftentimes what you'll see is they'll get interviewed during, you know, one of these, they're called shooting slumps. They'll get interviewed during a slump and they'll always say the same thing. I just got to trust the work I put in. I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. I just got to keep, you know, trusting that I've done the work that's required and eventually the shots will start going in. And guess what? Eventually the shots start going in. So like that's a really good lesson. If something's going poorly at the moment, zoom out and have a look at the trajectory over a longer period of time. Are you improving over time? Are you doing more workload over time? Is your technique improving over time? Are you getting stronger over time? If the answer to that is yes, just keep doing it. Just keep going. If the answer to that is no, then maybe start to zoom back in a little bit and start thinking about the details in the sort of micro, macro, and sort of day-to-day life stuff.
Yeah.
Because that can have an impact and get you back to that upward trajectory. But oftentimes, this is something that I said on the Barbells and BS podcast that I did with the boys from Scotland last week. Sometimes all we need to do to get us out of a plateau is just continue for longer. And sometimes all we need is more time. Because, you know that meme of the guy digging for diamonds?
Oh, yeah, and he stops like just before he gets to the
turns
diamond.
out just before he gets the breakthrough. You see that happen in powerlifting a lot where people like they're going through a plateau or a difficult period and then they make a really drastic change just before they're about to break through. And it's like you really do need to just keep giving it a crack because you never know when that breakthrough is coming.
Yeah. Something that I've been telling my clients a lot, especially my newer clients who are trying to learn a new technique or trying to learn like the squat or deadlift or whatever from scratch, is that your technique is not going to be perfect straight away. It's going to take time and it's going to take repetitions and repetitions. And sometimes the feedback that I give them is literally just keep doing what you're doing and keep practicing the cues that I've given you. And it's not going to be perfect next session. It's probably not going to be perfect next week, but we are seeing improvements. You're seeing that last week you did 1 rep, right? This week you've done 2 reps, correct?
Yep.
The next week you have 3 reps where things are doing well. You know, so a big part of it is that consistency over time and doing the same thing without thinking that you need to do anything extra. There is no magic pill or magic formula that'll get things to a perfect point.
Yeah.
It's going to be a continuous journey of improvement, which is why like people like you and I really enjoy powerlifting because you feel like you can always improve on something and it's a learning journey. But I think if you aren't able to zoom out and see it from this macro perspective, that's when people start to get into a really deep rabbit hole and keep thinking like, I need to optimize this, I need to optimize this, and they end up going nowhere.
Yeah, and the conversation of optimization always frustrates me because there is actually no such thing as optimization, because there is no way of knowing that one thing is the perfect like choice.
True.
Because we can't simultaneously run 15 experiments with the same person at the same time under the same circumstances without them like having a lab, being in a lab and you feeding them the same thing and them sleeping the exact same and them having the zero externals or the exact same externals. So when you try to actually optimize, when you make a change to the program, you're not the same individual that you were the previous week because you've got an extra week of training under your belt, probably a little bit more fatigue. You've got likely a different schedule of life. You likely have a slightly different sleep schedule. You likely have a slightly different nutrition environment. And the things that are supposed to be controlled in an experiment are not supposed to change. Whereas you have all of these factors going on in your life that change all the time. You know, ups and downs in mood, ups and downs in all this kind of shit. So if you make a programming change, you don't actually know if that's what's had the outcome or whether it's actually just something in your life. So when coaches try to like isolate these particular variables on a week-to-week basis and like make this tiny little tweak and then something goes right and they think they're a fucking genius for it, you actually have no idea if you've done something that's worked or not.
Yep.
Because maybe the person just got 2 hours extra sleep for a week.
Just worked harder.
Or maybe they liked the change from a psychological standpoint and that allowed you to apply more effort.
Yeah. I think that there is a degree of optimal when it comes to teaching someone technique. If you really base it off their leverages, for example, and base it off the fundamentals of what makes an efficient lift, there is a degree of optimization that you can achieve. But I think it gets to a point where if you dig too deep and you try to continue to optimize too much and you try to like pinpoint every single small detail to try to optimize, then it tips over to a point where it becomes a bit too much. Like, is your effort actually giving you the return that you're anticipating or you want? That's what I think about optimization.
From a technique standpoint, I think there are definitely characteristics of good squats, of good benches, of good deadlifts.
Yeah.
But looking at the variance in the best lifters in the world and how differently they squat, how differently they bench, how differently they deadlift, tells me that there is probably no perfect technique. And that means that the other thing I think is like, if you put someone in a quote unquote perfect or optimal position and you say, I want you to do all of your reps with zero deviance in technique, they're not going to be able to lift anything heavy enough to actually be stimulative. Like if you were to do absolutely perfect squat reps where your knees didn't come in even slightly, the bar didn't shift back and forward at all, you'd be doing like 100 kilos. And that wouldn't be enough stimulus to actually help you get stronger. So at some point, you have to actually push yourself to the point where your technique does break down, because that's the load that's going to be heavy enough to actually help you get stronger.
Yeah, and also demonstrate to you, like, where does your technique actually break down for you to learn and to understand, like, okay, at this point, this is what we need to work on.
And even then, like, if your technique is breaking down in order for you to achieve certain weight, is that really a breakdown, or is that just like a necessary deviation that your body needs to make for you to stand up?
Well, I think
because like that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, we don't have to go into that now, but like that's a whole nother conversation, because if you did hold that perfect technique and you weren't able to lift the weight, is that really a better option?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, is that really the quote unquote perfect or optimal technique for you then? Because if your body is telling you like it wants to lift in this certain way to then achieve a heavier weight, well, maybe you have to bias more towards that direction or that technique. An example that I can think of is Claudia, right? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have thought that optimally her leverages... I don't
think anything optimally, but yeah.
Well, her leverages make sense for her to stand wider, right? To try to hit depth more. But at the moment she's squatting quite narrow and she's hitting even better depth. And it's like, well, all the data, all the reasoning would lead you to believe that a wider stance would be more quote unquote optimal for her, right?
Can you say better?
You can say it better if you want, but that's how I'm gonna word it.
But yeah, I agree. I agree. You can have all this information. It can lead you to a certain thing, but then the answer can actually be something completely different.
Yeah.
And that's something that we see like relatively often in powerlifting. You see some of the best benches in the world tucking their elbows in, and then as they press, they flare out.
Yeah.
You would tell them like, oh, you should get your elbows under the bar at the start of the rep, and they do it and they're weaker. So like, is that really better?
Yeah. I don't know.
So yeah, like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of conversation to be had around variance in technique, variance in programming, variance in all this kind of stuff. And you kind of figure it out as you go. And it's not something that happens like in one session. It's not something that happens in one block even. It's usually stuff that occurs over the course of your training career that informs decisions that you make. You collect all this data over the course of multiple training cycles, and that informs the next one and informs the next one. And slowly over time, you've got this program that really fits the person.
Yeah, and I think the other reason that I mentioned in my post about why your training sucks right now is whether or not you're actually putting in enough effort and time into your training, and whether you actually believe in your training. And I feel like that is a more important base and more important fundamental than actually like what's a quote unquote optimal technique. I think that if you actually believe in what you're doing, regardless of whether or not it's like 3 sets of 8 or 3 sets of 5 or whatever, if you believe that that's going to get you stronger, you're going to come into your sessions with more intent and more purpose and put more effort into your training, which will in turn provide you with more stimulus and therefore lead to more strength, like getting stronger. And I think a lot of people, what they tend to do is if they feel like their lifts are in the trash or in the bin, they start putting less emphasis at their training, whether that's conscious or unconscious. And because of that, your training actually turns out shittier because you're putting less effort into it. You don't believe in what you're doing. So that's definitely an important conversation to have if you're feeling that way with your coach as well. If you feel like, I just don't think that this is working, well, provide your reasoning as to why, and we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah. And the buy-in, the belief is like so important. You see this with particular coaches, like particularly like American coaches.
I was just thinking about
who have like
a particular American coach,
who have like these systems, right? Like, you know, RTS versus the strength guys, very, very different in terms of what they give their clients. But the client comes to them because they like the system, they believe in the system, they've seen them produce results, and they're ready to give the effort. And we know that the two most important things for powerlifting success is time and effort. And if you like what you're doing, you're likely to put in more effort. If you like what you're doing, you're likely to do it for a longer period of time.
Yep.
And those two things equal results.
And spend more time doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, really important to me that my clients enjoy what they're doing. And I'll ask them all the time, like, you know, how are you enjoying your accessories? Is there anything you want to swap in or out? Is there any ways that we can kind of get some novelty in that's going to like sort of allow you to up the effort a little bit on the stuff that's not as quote unquote necessary?
Not specific.
Because there's stuff in the program that I find to be like non-essential. You know, your squats, bench, your deadlifts. How that looks is going to be slightly different based on each person and based on their preference and it's based on what they need. But then the accessory work is like, we need a few sets of back training. We need a few sets of arms. We need some leg isolation work.
Yep.
How we do that doesn't really matter very much. You tell me how you like to do it, what's going to like be interesting for you.
Yeah.
And we can make it more fun.
Yeah. I think if someone was to tell you, or if someone was to say, oh man, my training just sucks right now, what's the number one thing that you would get them to do? If they're like, they come to you like, fuck, all my lifts just feel like shit. What would you tell them to do?
Well, I would usually do like a bit of an audit with them.
Yeah.
So like I would ask some of the questions that we spoke about earlier around their life, their job, their work, their sleep, their nutrition. Like I feel like viewing training performance as almost like a byproduct of what's going on in the rest of your life, I think can be really important. If there's no issues or no like red flags that I see when they talk about those kind of things, then we can talk about like, well, what do you want to work towards at the moment? Like, do you feel like you have a purpose? Do you feel like you have a goal? Do you feel like you're actually working towards that purpose and that goal? And oftentimes what they will say is like, oh, I feel a little bit lost at the moment.
Yeah.
And usually this happens like after they've done a comp.
I was going to say after a comp.
Maybe like 2 blocks after the comp. Because usually the first block after the comp, it's like, cool, they've done the comp. If they've done well, they're like, they get an extra bit of motivation. They want to do really well again. It feels good. Or they do badly and then they get a little bit of motivation because like, fuck, I can't let that happen again. I need to up the ante. And then they get into that. And then the second block, it's like, they don't have the same amount of enthusiasm and it tends to drop off a little bit. And then they don't have a comp booked in. So they've just come out of a comp. They've got like the little post-comp blues. Their motivation's down a little bit. And then they don't have something on the calendar coming to look forward to.
Yeah.
So that might be what I would actually do in that instance. I'd be like, do you feel like you need a comp to work towards?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times the answer is yes. And we'll put it far enough in the future that like there's not immediate pressure.
Yeah.
Like we can kind of slowly build into it because usually when someone's in a rut, they kind of need to like pull back a little bit to allow themselves to build again. So if you put a comp 8 weeks or 10 weeks in the future, you don't really have enough time to like successfully pull back, get them fresh, and then build back into it. And I've forgotten the rest of your question. What was the rest of your question?
Yeah, what would you do if someone was saying that all their lifts were in the trash?
Yeah, I'd try to figure out like their trajectory, where they see themselves and where they want to be, and then talk with them openly about like, how do you think we can get there, and try to get an idea of what they believe in, like we spoke about before, and try to build a plan that they've bought into and they feel like that they've provided input into. Because that's the other thing is humans like to have agency over stuff. They like to feel involved in the process. They like to feel like they've helped come up with the plan. And a lot of times they do. And I think that's actually really, really useful, is to like go through like, okay, well, we can do this for a couple of blocks and we can do this. And they're like, oh no, but I think I prefer to do this, this, and this for a couple of blocks. I'm like, okay, like if you think that'll work, sweet, we go for it. And if you kind of give them the like affirmation that their idea is a good one, they get like double buy-in, because they had like initial buy-in, and then you've like confirmed that that's a good idea, and then they get like an extra buy-in. It's like, okay, cool, like let's really do this.
Yeah.
Like I know I feel that when I talk to Matty and I'm like, hey man, I really want to try this sort of structure, and he's like, actually, yeah, that sounds sick. I'm like, oh, cool, like let's go, and then I'm like extra keen. Yeah, that's probably all I have to say about that question.
Well, you mentioned after you mentioned asking about the external variables, that's the final thing that I mentioned in my post about why your training sucks right now. And it's about having a clear goal and a clear plan. And I think that for people who don't actually have a goal that they're working towards when they train, it can be very unmotivating. It can be very sort of just like the effort that you put into your training the effort that you put into your training is going to reflect your goal. If you don't have a goal, then you basically aren't, in my opinion, you're not going to be as motivated or as keen to train. And that actually happened to me when I didn't have a comp in sight. My goal was to take time off competing, to have a long off season, prioritize work and stuff like that, which probably is the reason why I didn't put as much energy into training. But because I didn't have a goal in mind, I didn't have the goal to like PR my total, I didn't have a goal to like make it to nationals, my training was just very mid throughout the year. And looking back, I think I don't regret making that decision, but I can relate to people now who don't have a goal in mind, that that's how training is probably going to feel. And yeah, every block's going to feel the same. And then there'll be times, and you know this, like weeks where training just feels like shit. And then weeks where I probably slept a bit better, had a bit more food, and I felt like training was great. And then I went like plus 50 kilos from what I went last week. And it was just like so fucking up and down. But I definitely agree that if you don't have a goal in mind, that's not going to help you with feeling a bit more motivated to train. But once you do have a goal set in mind, then you can kind of zoom out and plan things out from a macro view and have like a macro block, and then split that up into smaller sections and go, okay, this block, we're going to focus on doing this. And then we're going to build on that and move on to the next block. The next block, the goals are to like double your max or whatever, and then build from there. And what I like to do as well with my clients is whenever they finish a block or, they do the last week of the block, then I go, all right, this is going to be the goal for the next block. This is what we want to keep working towards. whether it be like a technique thing or a intensity thing or volume thing. Like these are going to be the goals for the next block. And I feel like that really helps people keep that momentum going. Also, I also have found that not actually maxing out like to the max at the end of each block helps just carry through that momentum too. I think that's really important if you want to continue sustained training over a long period of time.
Yeah, you said a few things that I think we could probably discuss for much longer. One of them, I really like what you said about having the zoom out approach and then splitting sections of the year up into certain segments.
Yeah.
I feel like this has kind of been lost a little bit in the current coaching meta of like golden micros and of
like weekly micros kind of thing.
Yeah,
weekly updating.
Repeating the same micro or repeating the same block 4 or 5 times in a row, or people who are like doing lots and lots of competitions and kind of always running the same cycle into a competition. Finish a competition, they run the same thing again to a competition. I feel like, having enough time to actually work on qualities and improve from comp to comp is really important. And then spending that time the right way is really, really important. And actually like taking time away from really, really heavy stuff to allow yourself to do enough workload underneath it to actually move the baseline up. And then when you go into doing that heavy stuff again, you've actually made an improvement. You've actually got more muscle. You've actually got better technique. You're actually getting through more workload and you're actually stronger. So you can actually show that off. So if you just repeat the same block over and over again, you're not going to really progress enough to the point where it's going to be motivating. And I think that's one of the big drawbacks to like repeating the same block over and over again. It's like you may actually progress, but you don't get the illusion of progressing very much because what you do in one block versus the next is so similar that you don't, you kind of can get lost in the weeds a little bit. And yeah, like I really love what you said about like actually using that time wisely to build and spend time and like, okay, this block we're going to focus on this and then this block and then we're going to bring top sets back in and we're going to push for X load. Something that you said about goals, I think is an interesting discussion. When you set a goal for a client, do you set like, hey, we're going to do this at X timeline, like this load at X timeline? Or do you kind of say, here's what we're going to roughly aim for in this?
Yeah. That's a good one because a lot of my clients are like, I want to hit X amount at the next comp. And it's like, well, I can't guarantee that, man. Like it really depends. I can try to get you there, but it also comes down to your effort and no one can predict performance in such a long period of time, like over a long period of time. So I definitely don't go like, yeah, next year you'll get 800. We can always aim for it. And I gas them up. I'm like, yeah, fucking oath. Like you can do it. I believe that they can do it, but it really comes down to what actually happens from now till then to achieve that. What I do though is, like I said, I gas them and go, hey, look, if you want to achieve that, this is what we need to do. Like if your total right now is 500 and you want to achieve 800 in like 3 years time, really you have to add 100 kilos each year, which is a lot of work to be done. Hey?
Steroids.
Peptides. Is that going to cancel us?
Trend.
We're going to have to do a lot of work over that period of time. So are you willing to do that work? And most people will say yes, they are, but
most people aren't.
Most people aren't. It's very easy to see through. Now I think it's very, for me, after coaching for so long now, so many people, it's very easy to see through those like, yeah, I can do it, man. I can do it, coach. It's like, well, I mean, it doesn't really, what you're doing, going out every weekend doesn't really connect to what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's a really important part of the discussion is like, are your actions aligning with your words?
Yeah.
Because if they're not, then it's very unlikely. If you have crazy goals, if you got goals that are like moderate and they're achievable with partying on the weekend and with not taking care of your sleep and your diet, by all means, like you'll be able to do that regardless. If you know someone's got a certain lifestyle that isn't very conducive to huge swaths of progress, then you have to kick them up the arse and be like, this is going to require sacrificing in this area. It's going to require probably you getting to bed earlier so that you can't play games. You're going to have to sacrifice time on the internet, fucking playing COD or whatever. You got to have to do this, and this with your diet to get your protein intake. You're going to have to do this, and this. are you willing to do it? And yeah, like you said, a lot of people will say yes, but then their actions will show you otherwise.
They do great for one block, and then the block after
Yeah.
it's like, oh, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, or like, oh, I went out once and then like it was over after that. Ate fast food for a week after having 10 beers.
Yeah. So I definitely think that goal setting has to be realistic, but I don't really go like, next comp we're going to hit 500 total when we really can't predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is going, let's make that a goal. Let's work towards it. Let's break it down. Break it down into it, like what we need to do to get there. And that makes it more digestible. It gives them a clear goal and plan, and it can help them stay on track to help them achieve that goal as well.
Yeah. And you might say like, okay, you want to squat 300 kilos and we've got 6 months to do it. So when you're 3 months out from competition, I want you to have done 280 for 2 reps.
Yeah.
Or 270 for 2 reps. And
Pretty
if you
much.
can do that, if you can get to that checkpoint, then we're on our way. It doesn't guarantee you success, but we're on track. We're on our way to get there. And I think that's a really important part is we can't predict progress. We actually don't know what the outcomes of our training are going to be.
Yep.
But we can just do our best on a session by session basis to put the work in, on a block by block basis to review that, see how it worked, make a couple of tweaks and move forward. But yeah, it can be quite tough because sometimes someone can get to a comp and maybe they just had a shitty day. Maybe they were strong enough for that 300 squat, but they cut depth and they didn't get it. Or they like lost balance at the top and beat the rack command. Or like we attempted 295 because that's all we needed for squat medal at international comp.
Yeah.
Or X, Y, or Z. And like we spoke about earlier, 20% of your training is going to suck. 20% is going to be awesome. 60% is going to be roughly what you expect. The same kind of applies to comps. Like if you do 10 comps, 2 of them are probably going to be pretty bad. 2 of them are going to be fucking awesome. 6 of them are going to be kind of
As expected.
7 out of 9 days. And if you just happen to have one of those 2 bad days on the day where you wanted to hit your goal and you didn't actually get it, it doesn't mean that all the training that you did leading up to that is wasted. It doesn't mean that the strength that you built is gone. It just means you have to push the goal back a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the overarching thing about everything that we've discussed so far is communication, right? If you fail to communicate what you're feeling and what you want out of your training to your coach, assuming you have a coach, or even like not even to your coach, but just like communicate it to yourself and understanding what you want out of your own training, how you're feeling, and the goal that you want to work towards. If there is no communication there or there is little communication, then you're not going to get very far. If your coach does not know how you're feeling, or your coach doesn't know that you're actually feeling shitty, you don't believe in your program, you don't enjoy what you're doing. If we don't know that, then we can't change anything about it.
Or maybe you've never actually thought about it.
True.
And this is something that I ask all my clients to do is a lot of my clients used to send me their training as they went through the session. Like, here's my top single. And then 10 minutes later, here's my next set.
I hate that, by the way.
And it's really annoying. Like, I don't look at it until they're finished.
Yeah.
But what I say to them is like, just hang on to the videos, hang on to your thoughts, give it a little bit of time to breathe, and then reflect on the entirety of the session at once and give me like a proper reflection. And what you find there is that the volatility and emotion is a lot less. Like if they've had a really bad set, then they'll send it to you and go, that fucking sucked. It was high, it was shit, it was hard, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if they do that set and then they do their back offs and maybe they're a little bit better, or they're not, and then they go onto bench and they go onto whatever, they're actually able to reflect on it at the end and go, this wasn't my best session, but here's why, or here's what happened.
Or I ended up doing better on my back offs.
Yeah, or or I was able to, stay in the session. Because I find that if they're like constantly looking for validation or looking to communicate during, that their mind kind of wanders away from the focus point, which is the session at hand.
Yeah.
And it's really important to, I said this to Yanni last week, to stay in the session, like stay invested in it. Don't get distracted. I fucking do this all the time when the basketball's on and I'm training and I watch basketball and then I'm like, oh fuck, haven't done a set in 10 minutes. And that set is always shit.
Yep.
Because I've completely lost like my train of thought. I've lost my focus. And I know that when I stay in the session, it kind of snowballs and the session improves as it goes. Whereas if you get distracted, you're watching the video a million times, or you're trying to get a response from your coach and you're not getting one, or maybe even you are getting one. You're now like away from what you're focusing on.
And that's the con with online coaching, hey? Like, online coaching is great, don't get me wrong, but I feel like, if you're sending videos mid-session and it does take you away, and even as a coach, if I'm trying to respond to you while you're training, for me, it just feels like, man, just get your training done first and then talk to me. Because even for me, like, I'm not going to be available or like every day just for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like, staying in your session is really important. And I've actually started putting a timer for my rest times. At the moment, the standard is 3 minutes. And then if I feel like I need a bit more time, then I add another like 2 or 3 minutes. But like for all my accessories, it's like a 3-minute timer, get shit done. I mean, obviously it's because I also don't want to waste time, but that does help me stay in my session as well. Like, especially if I'm scrolling, like you don't realize how long you're fucking scrolling for.
Forever.
Yeah. Because it just keeps going.
You get in the DMs, you fucking send a few DMs. Oh, sending some reels to people.
I respond to my girlfriend and shit, But then if I set a 3-minute timer, it's like, well, it's 3 minutes, man. I got to get my shit done.
Better go do it, yeah. Or you start yapping with someone and it fucking takes 10 minutes and then...
Yeah. But then the timer's an excuse, like, oh, sorry, my timer's gone.
Yeah, exactly right. It's a good excuse. Yeah.
All right.
So many more things we could talk about.
There is a lot. But that was a good chunk of
nice
stuff.
and concise.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening. It's a good chat.
It was a
Next
good chat.
week we'll be back with Beck Chambers.
Oh.
Got her on next Thursday.
Nice.
That should be good. And then Meganats.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Are you doing a Meganats preview?
No.
What?
You want me to...
No.
You want me to research and preview 64 divisions of masters and
No.
sub-juniors and juniors?
Yeah. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, comment what else we should talk about, or comment what you learnt from today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Okay. Bye-bye. Break it down.